What does Periphery, Devin Townsend and Taylor Swift have in common? They are all using this ingredient in their songs. This will instantly take your songs from sounding amateur to more pro. Of course, I am talking about post-production. In this video, I will go through 5 principles for getting amazing sounding post-production. The section I will use as an example is this. Let me first play you what it sounds like without any post-production, just so you can see the difference it makes. So this is with no post-production, and now I'm engaging it. All of this stuff. As you can see, if I undo the folder, it's a lot of stuff. But yeah, let's not waste any time. Let's get right into principle number 1. The first principle is intent. You need to have a clear intent with what you're putting into the song. If you're putting in post-production, it needs to contribute something to the overall feeling of the song. So a good example of this is if I want to add drive to a section that I feel is missing, I might add these shakers and a tambourine, and it sounds like this. This adds a lot of drive to this chorus section that I really want to stand out. But if I go to another section, which is the breakdown section over here, it's a lot more spaced out and floaty feeling, so here I don't want the shakers going on because it will take away from the intent of this section. It doesn't contribute to the intent. But halfway through, I'm adding the shakers in again as the drum beat changes a bit. Here the shakers are going on now. And the drum beat changes as well to match the feeling. So another example would be here in the chorus vocals. All down from the sky, our world it runs on lines. So this is one of the main hooks of the chorus. And then our guitarist had the idea it would be cool to add a lead guitar line that matched it. It matches the intent that this needs to stand out. If he were to play the exact chorus melody all over, this wouldn't stand out as much. So use it with intent in mind. That's the first principle. The second principle is quite similar, but it's more of a technical aspect of it, is to choose your sounds wisely. So say I have an intent that I want this chorus section to be more full sounding. So then I'm thinking, okay, what sounds can I achieve this with? Maybe it's with using strings. Maybe it's using a pad sound, which will serve the mix the best. Of course, we can use EQ and stuff to shape the sound in the mix, but if we can choose a sound from the start that fits the mix more nicely, we will have an easier time. For instance, in a metal context, we have a lot of bass-heavy instruments. We have the drums here, which are doing a blast beat. We have the bass and the rhythm guitars. So all of these are eating up so much of the low end of the mix that if I want to create a more full sound, maybe a deep shallow is not what I would pick here, for instance. I would pick a violin or a trumpet, you know, like a higher pitched instrument. If you think about how an orchestra is arranged, each instrument has its own place in the frequency spectrum. That's why an orchestra sounds so good without any processing live, right? It's because these instruments have been chosen to fit a very specific part of the frequency spectrum that doesn't interfere too much with the other instruments. It's the exact same principle when you are choosing sounds for your metal songs. Here I have a pad sound that is quite high. Here another one. Also piano, like, yeah, really bright instruments. High tremolo guitar. So if I take all of these post-pro together, you can hear it's a lot of higher tune stuff as compared to the low and heavy stuff in the band instruments. It's tailing off here. And it's not too much bass information in this post-production stuff. So yeah, choose your sounds to fit the mix. The next principle is to use effects like bass drops and risers tastefully. This is a normal thing, which I have been through as well. When you first discover bass drops and all of these post-production effects, you just go crazy and you put them everywhere. And for some styles of music, that can be cool. As a general rule though, I feel that it's better to use them tastefully and not everywhere, because it can help to make certain sections hit much harder, like here in the breakdown. I want it to hit super hard, so here I have put a bass drop, which will just punch you in the face and make it that much heavier. I will play you first without it and then with it, you will see the difference. Now with it. So much punch, right? But if I were to put this everywhere in the song, this would lose its effect, and yeah, it would just get really silly. So that's the next thing, use those tastefully. When done tastefully, it can be an amazing tool. Like for this section before the chorus, I am using a riser to build the tension. It just builds the tension really nicely, but it's easy to overdo this stuff, so beware. Now we're moving into mixing territory, and it's using EQ and saturation. EQ I'm using to shape the sound, to make it not overlap too much with the other instruments. And I am using saturation to actually blend it together a bit more with the other instruments. So it's a bit contradictory, but saturation does it in a nice way. It can sound quite disjointed if you have a very pristine violin, for instance, playing on top of distorted rhythm guitars. It can sound very disjointed and not a cohesive mix. Saturation is very important to blend these two styles together. I'm doing it some on the individual instruments, but for the purpose of this video, I'm just going to show you what I'm doing on my bass. If I remove the bass processing, it sounds like this. Starting with this one. This is a plugin that I love. It's from Slate Digital and it's the virtual mix bus. This gives some saturation and some glue for all of the different elements in the post-production bus. More saturation in terms of tape saturation. It's all about doing it in small increments, right? Next, I have a multiband compressor just to keep all of the frequencies super level, because I have a lot of very transient, heavy information in some instruments, like this staccato string, for instance. And when doing it with all of the others, it can make certain frequencies stick out a bit too much. So I'm using this to make it more level, essentially. Also cutting some volume here for the context of the mix. I'm going to leave the next plugin for the final principle actually and go straight to Golfos, which is, yeah, it's a bit of a magical plugin. It just makes it sound better and more clear. It's somehow cutting resonances that make the sound muddy, and it makes it stand out a bit more. Soothe, just to make it less harsh. This is what it's cutting out. Saturn I have turned on only for the breakdown section, actually, because I found that the post-production wasn't matching the intensity of the other instruments, so I put this on at warm tape mode. And this final EQ is not doing anything. Next we're moving on to the fifth principle, which is also mixing related, and that concerns ducking. Ducking certain frequencies that are overlapping with vocals and with the band instruments. Starting with the band instruments, and I'm going to use Trackspacer for both of these examples. I am ducking everything below 200 Hertz or so, by an amount of 7%. I am now sidechaining this band bus, and for context, here is what is fed into the band bus. So you can see it's ducking this part here. All of the bass I don't want. I will say I'm not feeding the bass drops into the post-production bus because that would defeat the purpose of a bass drop, right? I don't want those to drop. But yeah, let's see what it's doing. It's quite subtle, but if you listen carefully, it becomes a bit more clear and less muddy sounding. More definition in the bass, I'm hearing. Also, this is ducking for the snare here. I'm doing the same thing for the vocals, so here I am feeding the vocal bus to a second instance, 400 Hertz up to 5K or so. I just want the mid-range to drop out for the vocals so they can have a lot of presence and not be muddied up by the post-production too much. But in the same way, what this is doing is it's allowing me to have more presence in those frequencies when the vocals are not playing. Especially if we go to a different section here before the chorus, where it's a rap vocal section, it becomes really apparent what it's actually doing. Now I want to hear from you. Did you find anything helpful in this video? Will you use something in your own projects? Let me know in the comments below, and see you next time.